Welcome to the US Crime Line's Sidebar, where we take you deep inside the courtrooms of some of the most gripping, high-profile, and notorious cases across the country. I'm your host, Annie Thompson. Today's episode dives into a chilling case out of Michigan, where a husband stands trial for the brutal murder of his wife. Her remains were discovered welded inside a gas tank, concealed for years. We also explore a groundbreaking civil trial unfolding in Los Angeles, where social media giants face accusations that their addictive platforms have caused lasting harm, especially to young users. But before we get to those, let's begin with a shocking trial opening from Park City, Utah. The courtroom was tense as Corey Richens, a wife and mother, sat quietly during opening statements in her trial. She faces charges connected to the fentanyl overdose death of her husband, Eric Richens. Prosecutors painted a stark picture of Corey as a woman drowning in debt, seeking millions from insurance policies to escape her financial troubles. They alleged she was involved in a secret affair with a man named Robert Josh Grossman, and that she contemplated leaving Eric to start a new life with him. Investigators revealed text messages from Corey to Grossman, where she spoke of dreams about divorcing Eric and securing a financial windfall. Corey's defense attorney, Catherine Nitor, countered with a deeply humanizing approach. She opened with the 911 call made after Eric's death, portraying Corey as a grieving wife and mother shattered by tragedy. The defense's argument is that Eric's death was an unfortunate consequence of his own struggles. He suffered from Lyme disease and battled painkiller addiction, which could have led to an accidental overdose. These two starkly contrasting narratives set the stage for what's expected to be a complex and emotionally charged trial, likely to last through March 26th. When reflecting on the opening statements, it was clear prosecutors struck a powerful tone. They weaved a provocative narrative about betrayal and greed, suggesting Corey had a calculated motive tied to both love and money. The defense strategy of blaming the victim, while sometimes necessary, is delicate, especially here, where Eric was portrayed as a likable man with no history of domestic violence or drug abuse. The defense's claim that Eric's death was caused by his own recreational drug use may prove difficult to convince jurors, who will have to grapple with the cause of death as the central issue. The key battle will likely revolve around medical evidence and expert testimony. Did Eric die from a massive fentanyl overdose that suggests foul play, or was it an accidental overdose stemming from previous drug use? The prosecution's case hinges heavily on this question. Complicating matters, a star witness for the prosecution, Robert Crower, who allegedly sold fentanyl to Corey through an intermediary, recently attempted to recant or muddy his prior statements. He claimed he was not selling fentanyl at the relevant time, but other substances, casting doubt on his credibility. This development could pose a significant challenge for prosecutors, though it does not necessarily mean the case is lost. If the prosecution can convincingly establish the cause of death and surrounding circumstances, such as a prior poisoning attempt involving a sandwich that made Eric ill, they may still secure a conviction. One difficulty the prosecution faces is relying on a witness who may receive leniency or no prosecution in exchange for testimony against Corey, a common but fraught tactic that can undermine jurors' trust. Nonetheless, the combination of financial motive, affair, and suspicious behaviors keeps a path open for conviction, though it's far from guaranteed. Turning now to Adrian, Michigan, where Dale Warner is on trial for the murder of his wife, Dee Warner. The case carries the weight of potential life imprisonment if Warner is convicted. He rejected a plea deal that would have lowered the charge to second-degree murder. Dee was last seen in 2021, and Warner gave conflicting accounts to police about the night she disappeared. Reports from friends and family describe Warner as abusive and controlling, even installing a GPS tracking device on his wife's car. Ultimately, a search warrant executed on property he owned led to the grim discovery. Dee's body was welded inside a tank intended for ammonia storage. The motive appears to stem from Dee's desire to divorce Warner, urging him to sell off his failing business so she could move on with her life. Warner's defense acknowledges a homicide occurred, but denies his involvement, criticizing the investigation and evidence presented against him. This trial is about a week in, and it's unfolding with considerable public interest. One legal point worth unpacking here is the charge of open murder in Michigan. While I don't practice there, as I understand it, some states, Michigan included, allow prosecution on an open count. That means the charge is simply homicide, without specifying first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or manslaughter. The jury then determines the appropriate level of culpability based on instructions from the judge. This differs from states like California, where prosecutors must specify the degree of murder they are charging, and juries cannot simply decide on lesser degrees without acquittal on the higher ones. This open murder charge can simplify the prosecution's case by focusing on establishing that a homicide occurred, leaving the jury to decide the level of intent or premeditation. It can be a tactical advantage, but it also requires clear guidance for jurors on how to apply the law to the evidence. The method of hiding the victim's body welded inside an ammonia tank on Warner's property is both shocking and telling. It strongly implicates Warner, as it's hard to imagine a third party committing murder and then going to such lengths to conceal the body on the accused's own land. The use of welding equipment, which Warner reportedly owns and knows how to use, adds another layer of suspicion. This element may shift the trial's focus from who did it to who else could have done it, with the evidence pointing overwhelmingly back to Warner. The condition of the body after years of decomposition likely complicates forensic analysis, but the location and manner of concealment remain powerful circumstantial evidence. It's a detail that prosecutors will lean on heavily to make their case, suggesting that only someone with access, knowledge, and motive would have orchestrated such an elaborate cover-up. Moving from criminal to civil matters, a significant legal battle is underway in Los Angeles involving the world's largest social media companies. Plaintiffs claim these platforms' addictive design has caused long-term harm, particularly to children. This case stands out because it challenges the very architecture of these tech giants' products rather than focusing on content posted by users. The Bellwether case, as it's called, features a plaintiff known as KGM, or K, and her mother. They allege that platforms like Meta, Snap, TikTok, and YouTube intentionally engineered their products to be addictive, despite knowing about the harmful side effects on young users. This case draws parallels to the lawsuits brought against tobacco companies in the 1990s, which led to significant industry changes and substantial settlements. Social media companies counter that no clear scientific link exists between their platforms and addiction, and they rely heavily on the Communications Decency Act of 1996 to shield themselves from liability for user-generated content. Notably, Snap and TikTok settled out of court early, leaving Meta and YouTube to face the brunt of the trial. The tobacco comparison is compelling in several ways. Both industries deal with products that have become ubiquitous and deeply embedded in daily life. The core allegation here is that these companies designed addictive features deliberately to keep users, especially children, engaged, much like tobacco companies once designed products to maximize addiction despite known health risks. The tobacco litigation resulted in landmark changes, advertising restrictions, massive settlements, funding public health initiatives, and the rise of advocacy groups raising awareness about smoking dangers. If this social media case follows a similar path, it could dramatically reshape digital platforms, especially how they design engagement algorithms and protect vulnerable users. In past lawsuits against social media companies, the focus was often on the content itself, harmful posts, misinformation, or dangerous interactions. The companies successfully argued that they were platforms, not publishers, and thus shielded from liability for user posts. This new legal approach targets the product's design and algorithms as inherently harmful, particularly to children who may not have the capacity to resist addictive features. This case raises complex questions about product liability, user responsibility, and corporate accountability. Are these platforms merely tools that people choose to use, or are they engineered traps designed to exploit human psychology for profit? The legal teams will debate these points vigorously. The plaintiff's case is particularly focused on the impact on children, emphasizing that young users are more vulnerable and less able to protect themselves. This adds a layer of ethical concern about targeting and designing addicting products for minors. As this trial progresses, it will set a precedent for many similar lawsuits across the country. If the plaintiffs succeed in convincing jurors that social media companies knowingly created harmful, addictive products, it could lead to sweeping changes in regulation, design, and corporate practices across the tech industry. The social media companies, in contrast, argue that engagement is simply a feature of a successful product. They contend that encouraging users to return frequently is not inherently harmful, and that their platforms provide valuable connections and information. The outcome will hinge on whether jurors see these products as addictive weapons or as neutral tools. This case's implications extend beyond social media giants today. It's about the future of technology, including emerging fields like artificial intelligence, where questions of design, ethics, and liability will only grow more important. How companies address user safety and addiction could become a defining issue for tech innovation in the decades to come. I want to thank Rich Schoenstein for joining me today to unpack these complex cases. Rich is a civil litigator and trial lawyer with Tarter, Krinsky & Drogan in New York City. Alongside his day job, he frequently appears as a legal analyst on News Nation and CBS, and he produces content on his YouTube channel, So Sue Me, where he explores civil litigation and other fascinating legal topics. For those interested in following these cases or learning more about the legal nuances, I encourage you to check out Rich's insights on YouTube and social media under the handle Lawful Riches. You can also find me, Annie Thompson, on Instagram and Twitter at Annie Thompson-esque. And if you want even more true crime coverage and legal analysis, visit my YouTube channel, Courtroom Confidential. We'd love to hear your questions or comments. Tweet us using the hashtag US Crime Sidebar, and we'll do our best to address them in future episodes. Thank you for joining the US Crime Line's Sidebar. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.